In this video we will merge the head, the body and the tail and sculpt the first layer of details. So let's select the head. I think we could add another level of detail here by pressing Ctrl 1. I think this will be much better. Although we will remesh the whole thing, it's good to use the subsurf modifier because it's also smoothing everything immediately here. And since this is still a quad-based geometry, it works perfectly fine. Let's apply the visual geometry to mesh. For the body, let's add again a subsurf modifier with one level of subdivision, and the tail is fine. Then let's select the head and the tail, and as last object the body, press Ctrl J to join everything, and then let's switch over to sculpt mode. You can see that face sets were added to each of these objects automatically. However, this doesn't matter because let's press Shift R to set a resolution, something like not too small, maybe something like 0.5. You can also see it under remesh, 0.0055. Let's press Ctrl R to see. Yeah, I think that's good. Now let's use the clay strips brush, hold down Shift, and let's smooth out the transitions first. And of course make sure that X symmetry is enabled here. So and here it's really just about adding a little bit more major shapes here. Let's add a little bit of geometry here around the leg. Let's also add some geometry here around the shoulders. Maybe let's get rid of this pointy edge here. Then let's use the draw sharp brush, add a sharp line here and smooth this a bit. So since this is a creature with a bunch of fat on it, we keep everything relatively smooth from the shapes. Then let's go to the face. One thing to mention here, you can see the little creature has the mouth open right now. However, we will sculpt it with the mouth closed, and later on after retopology we will add the possibility to open the mouth once again. So let's add a little bit of details here. Now let's get an idea where we want to have the mouse. So maybe let's press numpad 1 to have the reference image overlay, and then let's simply draw a line somewhere here, so that we have a rough idea where we want to have the mouse. Shouldn't look perfect with this low resolution, just to get a very basic idea. Maybe let's use a crease brush here, make it very small and add this sharp line here. Let's see, it's going behind the eyes. So from this perspective, I think it's even going here. But I think when this creature is like smiling, this edge will be pulled backwards a bit anyway. Let's use a clay strips brush, smooth this here and maybe remove a little bit. This part down here is relatively small and it should not look as if the creature has like super thick lips. So maybe let's use a draw sharp brush, invert it and add a sharper line on top here. I know with this low resolution we can't go too detailed, but it should just give us an idea of where we want to put the mouse. Also we can go back to the eyes and sculpt a little bit more around the eyes so that we get this distinct shape here. You can also use the draw sharp brush to draw around the area where the eye is, so it really looks as if there is a hole. Later on also we will close the eyes, so we have enough geometry to close the eyelid, but for now let's sculpt it with the eyes open. Let's press G for the grab brush, move it a bit to the top, then let's change the fall off to sharp and make this area a bit more pointy, maybe here as well a tiny bit, and then let's change it back to smooth. And as you can see, in general I stay relatively rough with the resolution, and of course the eyes should not fall out, so we need to take care that it's covered enough with the eyelids. So then I think we can take away some of the geometry over here and maybe make this one here a bit thicker, maybe with a draw sharp brush. So it's more round, but yeah, not too much. So as you can see, the eyes are still too wide open. So maybe let's check if we can close this a bit more with a grab brush. Let's take away some of the geometry over here. So as you can see, I just play around with the shape. I'm testing different things by removing and adding geometry. So there's nothing right and wrong at this stage. It's also playing around with the shape to see how we can translate the 2D image into the 3D shape. I feel on top here we have a bit too much geometry, which make it look weird. Let's press G and move this part a little bit more to the top. Down here, What we can do also to check this out, let's select the image here, move this to the side and see how it looks compared to each other. Not too bad. I think the eyes stand out a bit too much, maybe. So what we can try is to move them back a tiny bit and then of course also change the shape a bit. And yeah, some changes we do now, maybe later on we will change again a little bit. This is something which we can't really plan completely. The sculpting is constant changing all the time. I still feel that the eyes are not fitting exactly what I want them to be. One thing we have to keep in mind, down here we are using the orthographic projection. If I press numpad 5, that's this one here, where we don't see the perspective distortion. So elements which are further away are smaller and elements which are closer to the camera are bigger. And of course the concept art is drawn in a perspective way. So we always have to check our creature in perspective mode and see if it's also aligning with the concept. Of course, since this is a 2D image, it will never be 100% accurate compared to the 3D model. However, we can look at different landmarks to see what's fitting and what's not. And here, for example, we can see that eye is on the one hand pretty close to the mouse down here, and it's also pretty far away from the mouse corner over here, and also the distance to the nose we can check. And in general, when I compare the size of the eye with the nose, for example, over here, then I think the eye over here is still too big and it's still too far to the outside. So let's go in here and maybe hide the eyes for a second. Press G for the grab brush and move this hole a bit closer to the eyes. Not too much. And I think in general we just have to make the entire thing a bit smaller. And keep in mind that here the creature is kind of laughing a bit, so the corner of the mouse is pulled back a little bit. So it's probably further away than we have it over here. Let's turn on the eyes once again. And I think in general, let's scale them a tiny bit smaller once again and maybe move them again a bit more to the inside here. And yeah, these tiny tweakings of getting the proportions right is one of the things which we will do throughout the entire sculpting process. So back in sculpt mode with a clay strips brush, first let's smooth this out a bit. Then let's maybe add slight geometry around the eyes. But yeah, let's don't go too deep into details here. However, I think if we take a look at the face here and the concept over here, it looks much closer now. Yeah, and as always, don't forget to save.